Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternities, ranking and reviewing the movies I saw in 2022. So this video is kind of a wrap-up video of 2022, talking about the movies I saw this year. Now, way back when, back in the olden days, when I first started my channel, I was doing a top 10 movies of the year video at the end of every year, along with my top 10 shows of the year. But as so I did that, I don't know for how many years I did that. I did that for several years, but eventually I stopped doing it and just did the shows one because I wasn't really seeing enough movies to justify it. And I also found when I was doing it, I was having to cram and watch all these movies at the end of the year to try to make my quota for 10, or at least, see enough movies to justify coming up with 10 best. And I just didn't have time to do that anymore. And also, like, when I first started my channel, I was more like movie orientated and wanted to do more videos about movies. But as the channel went on, I started to hyper focus more on shows, more specific shows. I mean, I did cover a lot of shows on my channel throughout the years, but mainly covering, Star Trek and Game of Thrones, and then also try to focus on The Expanse as well, but those videos never really took off, but I did it anyway. And so I focused less and less on movies, so I stopped doing these top 10 movies of the year. But this year, I saw some movies, and in fact, even the years I didn't do it, like I saw movies, and I wanted to talk about them on my channel, and I didn't really have a video to do that. And so I thought, instead of doing a top 10, because I didn't see enough movies to justify a top 10, if I did do a top 10, like, more than half of the countdown would be movies I just think are okay. So instead of doing a top 10, I'm just going to come up with my silly awards of how I feel about the movies I saw this year and put them into these categories. But I will, at the end of this video, do a top 3 of my 3 favorite movies of the year. But other than that, I'm just going to talk about all the movies I saw this year, which, don't worry, wasn't very many, and what I thought of them. So let me go ahead and jump into that, and I'll start with my first award for the video, and that is the Forgettable Movie of the Year award, and that goes to The Adam Project. Is terrible time travel movie on Netflix. Although I say terrible because the time travel logic was terrible. The movie itself, as I said, it wasn't so much terrible as it was forgettable. In fact, I constantly forget this movie exists. My sister mentions it several times on her channel about because how terrible the time travel logic was, really irked her. And in fact, she's the one that first told me about this movie, and I was curious and I saw it. And I keep forgetting that it exists. It's just that I was looking at movies 2022 and I was like, oh yeah, this movie exists. Yeah, the time travel logic was awful. I mean, the character story was okay. I mean, it was pretty decent. So overall, I don't know. This movie just slips my mind. I'll probably forget about it next year that it exists. Anyway, my forgettable action movie of the year award goes to The Northman, a movie that I just saw couple days ago, so I did cram a little bit to fit in some movies I wanted to see before I made this video, because I heard someone put this on their number 1 favorite movie of the year of their top 10, and I've heard other people say it was a really, really good movie, but I was a bit trepidatious to watch it because it was done by this director whose movies I haven't seen, but I've heard of, and they sound like pretentious, artsy stuff that I wouldn't be into. And it does seem like that, as people describe this movie as being a bit too artsy. And so I watched it, and yeah, it was artsy, but not in the kind of artsy way that I think is creative. More the artsy way I think is pretentious. um, and it was just a generic action movie. It had good acting in it, sure, but the plot was so simplistic, revenge story. In fact, it just gets really up itself, and yeah, so I actually don't think I'm going to remember this movie very well. So, next award goes to Forgettable Indie Movie of the Year. This one I actually did like, but not enough to I think I'm going to remember, because I've seen a lot of indie movies throughout the decades, and even the good ones that I like at the time, if it doesn't stand out as particularly good as a great movie, then I tend to forget them more than the mainstream movie, just because the mainstream movies I'm reminded of more often through social media, but the indie movies are easier to slip through the cracks. And so my award for Forgettable Indie Movie of the Year is Emily the Criminal, which I just saw on the plane flying back to the States. Yeah, it was a decent movie to watch on a plane. It's certainly, it had good acting. It had, God, I keep forgetting her name. But this actress, I think, is pretty good. And it had the dude who played Shades from Luke Cage. And yeah, the ending was different than I thought. I thought, oh yeah, this is going to end in a very stereotypical way, but it didn't. But it's still like, oh, so they went that direction, but it wasn't like, didn't make me think the movie was great or anything. But it was good. And it was a decent movie about, definitely had a lot of strong, poignant commentary on the sad state of our economy, and just the shit way that students and people of with criminal backgrounds and low means are treated. So that was good, but it didn't really stand out for me as having that much to say. So, speaking of watching movies on the plane, my next award is movie to watch on a plane. And that goes to The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Now, I saw this earlier this year when I flew out to Oregon. And it's the kind of movie that I would never watch if I wasn't stuck on a plane and I see what movies they have. I'm like, might as well watch this one. It was, because I didn't have any intention of seeing it beforehand, it was a silly premise of Nick Cage sort of playing himself, but it's a really highly fictionalized version of himself, where he's flying out to, see this billionaire who's paying for him to go out and perform for him or to meet him, and it turns out to be a cartel member or whatever, and played by Pedro Pascal, who's another actor I really like. But this movie was a bit silly. It was over the top silly. It did have that 90s action feel to it. It's appropriate because it's about Nick Cage. But I've never been that huge into seeing Nicolas Cage do his over-the-top bullshit. I don't hate it, but I'm just not that into it. So it was just it was a good movie to watch on a plane, I guess. Anyway, so my next award I got 2 films for, and that is Too Many Twists Award. That's a movie, those movies that, they have a twist, ooh, that's a good twist, and they have another twist, and then they have another twist, and then they have another twist, and then another twist, and by the end of it, you're like, well, you're not shocked anymore, because there's so many twists that it just becomes tedious, and you're kind of wondering, like, what's the damn point of this movie? It kind of makes you like, and it confuses the movie too much, where you're like, what actually happened? So the first one I'll mention for this award wasn't that bad. It was actually, I think it was an enjoyable movie, and maybe it had one too many twists, but it was still good, and that's Glass Onion, the Knives Out sequel. which I just watched before recording this video. Um, yeah, I mean, I was almost a mid-movie twist, maybe a bit further, not towards the end, but, more of the middle. But anyway, that twist was actually really good. And I do like the non-linear storytelling. But, I don't know, it kind of confused things a bit, and the actual ending I found not that satisfying. And they did go a little bit overboard with the twist. But it was an enjoyable movie. But the other one that I have for this award, my number one, Too Many Twists, had way too many twists, and that is Bullet Train, and the movie I just saw on the plane flight back to America with Brad Pitt. And, it was stylized, and it has that particular style where they have this like Tarantino-esque or Guy Ritchie-esque, where they have all these different characters and they have their names pop up and they go through all their backgrounds and they sprinkle them throughout the film. So that was interesting, but then the movie had way too many twists. Like, oh, here's another twist, and here's this twist, and here's that twist, and here's this. And so by the end of the movie, I'm like, so what actually did happen? And I didn't care. Like, and especially the last couple twists came, I was like, oh, great, another twist. Just what this movie means. Like, it doesn't already have enough fucking twist. So that was, so in the end, I didn't think this movie was all that good. I mean, it was okay, I guess. Anyway, my next award is the Style Over Substance Award, and that goes to The Batman, which I'm kind of over Batman, to be honest. I was a huge fan of Batman, like when I was 11, I guess, when the Michael Keaton one came out, or maybe how old was that? I was more like 8 when that came out. But anyway, Batman Returns, I think I was 11 or 10, something like that. But anyway, I was a huge Batman fan back then, but I haven't been recently, particularly if anyone knows me. I'm not the biggest fan of the Nolan Batman films, and I think they're a bit overrated. And then the whole, don't even get me started on the whole DCEU thing. Like, I just had no interest in that. And so The Batman, I was like very indifferent to. I only watched it because it was on HBO Max. I could watch it for free. Well, I pay my subscription for HBO Max anyway. And I found it kind of boring. I think if I could see why some people would really like it, because they're really into this style of the goth, Dark Avengers, Batman, that kind of thing. If people wanted, because there wasn't really a Batman movie that leaned this heavily on this particular style, which I think is probably reminiscent of certain comic books that people are fans of. Certain particular Batman comic books. And so if that's what you're really after, and this is good, hey, more power to you, but it's not my thing. For me, there wasn't that much to the story or to the characters. It was all about the style. And so that's why I think it's style over substance. I think it was all about, ooh, look at how stylistic this is, and there wasn't much other than the style to latch on to the movie. And by the way, Robert Pattinson, easily the worst Batman. Easily. I had this argument with someone saying, oh, it was George Clooney. George Clooney was just in a bad movie. He himself was not that bad of a Batman. He actually worked really well as Bruce Wayne, whereas Robert Pattinson's biggest weakness was Bruce Wayne. I did not buy him as Bruce Wayne for a single goddamn second. Worst Batman. Easily. Anyway. Next award is a movie that thinks it's more clever than it is award, which I didn't really know how to classify this movie, so I just came up with that. It was actually a decent movie. I didn't hate it. I actually kind of liked it. It did make me think, and that is The Menu, another movie that I just watched tonight, which I heard from critics was really good. And, I just feel like there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened in the movie. The characters were really interesting. The acting was phenomenal. And the story was interesting too, and I do like the style of the movie, but I just feel like there should have been more there. Like, I just don't feel like there was enough there. And then so I watched this video trying to explain the movie because I was like, there needs to be more meaning behind this. And they explained that the movie was kind of a metaphor for making movies because they had a food critic that was really, made fun of or put down in this movie and shown as like evil because she put all these restaurants out of business. And they had this other foodie who was like obsessed with food and knew all the textures and taste and everything, but then he was humiliated by the chef. And so they're saying that the point was it was kind of a metaphor for people who pick apart movies and know every little detail, and other people or critics. And that really made me think actually a lot less of the film, because I think movies that make fun of critics, well, maybe the exception is Kevin Smith did in Jane Silent Bob, where they went around beating up the internet commentators. That was great. But it makes me think more of movies like M. Night Shyamalan. He did that in the Lady in the Water film. And it's just, M. Night Shyamalan sucks as director. I'm sorry. And so for him, trying to attack, I just think movies that attack its critics and especially if you're attacking someone who knows a lot about films, dissects this, maybe I'm taking it a bit personally, but I mean, they do it because they love films and they want to learn about how it's made and created, and I don't think that's a bad thing and something to be put down. And if your intention is saying, well, you should, if you criticize the film, if you overanalyze it, then you're a bad guy, you're wrong, you're stupid, you should just sit back and enjoy the film and have fun, then you're probably a bad filmmaker. That being said, I did like this film. I don't think the director's a bad filmmaker. I just think that's a shitty, analogy to make, and you should focus on making great films instead of picking apart critics. Just my humble opinion. I mean, I'm saying this as someone who doesn't always agree with critics. Sometimes I think the critics are morons and outright wrong, but for a filmmaker to make a film about killing critics or critics being so the villain, I don't like it. I think you shouldn't focus on making a good film instead. Maybe it's my thoughts. Anyway, so. And, it kind of offends me saying that films should be beyond criticism or analysis. That's the whole fun of watching films for some people. But anyway, sorry. I still liked the movie. I liked it less when I heard that analysis, though. Maybe that analysis is wrong and that's not their intention, but I kind of think it is. But anyway, so next movie I want to talk about is my underwhelming movie award, and that goes to the movie Nope. I don't know. I just wasn't whelmed. I was underwhelmed by this movie. I think Jordan Peele may be a little bit overrated, or maybe just not for me, you could say. I do think Get Out is not as great as everyone else makes it out to be. I did like Us. If anything, I think Us is a little bit underrated because a lot of people don't really talk about that movie. And I think Us is probably my favorite Jordan Peele movie. I thought it was better than this one, which I know a lot of people were talking about and hyping up, and I didn't actually want to see it that much, but my sister wanted to go out to movies, and this is the one she really wanted to see, so I just went along with her, and I heard that it was good, so I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. Here's the thing: it has this section of the movie that tells this detailed backstory of the side character, and I thought it was done very well. It was a riveting storytelling, but ultimately irrelevant to the main plot of the film, and reason why, which I won't say because it'll be spoilers, but it rendered the whole thing irrelevant. So what is the point? And that's one thing my sister asked me after watching the film. I was like, well, what was the point of that? All that scene that went on for half hour. And I was like, oh, maybe it's a metaphor for the main villain of the film. But And that's probably it, but I don't think it's a good enough reason. So it's like, I think this movie could have been better if, again, it needed more to it. There needed to be more substance, I think, to it. It felt kind of hollow to me. But anyway, we get to the next one, which is the most disappointing movie of the year for me, and that is Thor: Love and Thunder. Not that it was a terrible movie; it was fine, but it's disappointing for me because Ragnarok is still one of my favorite MCU movies of all time. It's in my top 3. I fucking love Ragnarok. Thought it was hilarious while being a great movie. Like, I love the style in that movie. And Taika Waititi has, being in New Zealand and coming of age there, learning about films and studying his films and seeing all of his New Zealand films and then seeing him make it big, is one of my favorite directors. But I think I don't love all of his movies, and I could see the touch of some of his movies I don't like as much represented in this one. It wasn't nearly as good as Ragnarok. I had this whole sequence with Zeus, which I thought was dumb and should have gone. I didn't like. And, there are parts of it I did like, but I did, particularly the thing with Jane being Thor, like, that was cool. And the relationship, seeing their relationship was the highlight of the movie. But, the screaming goats, like, that was just annoying. I didn't really find that funny. It definitely was not as funny, nor as it had as great stylized action as Ragnarok did. So that's why I found it a bit disappointing. So next we will get, now it's time for me, if I haven't irritated you yet with my opinion, I'm about to. So I'm going to get to most overrated movie of the year, and I know everyone and their mother is going to disagree with me, which is why I think it's overrated. And that is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everyone's talking about, like, this is the greatest movie since sliced bread. Like, so many people have put this as the best movie of the year. Every review I've seen of it said it was, like, a masterpiece and amazing. I will admit to having some bias against the movie before I saw it, because I found out it was directed by the same guys who directed this movie, what was it called? Swiss Army Man, where Daniel Radcliffe plays a farting corpse, and this guy's on this desert island. He's, fucking around with this farting corpse, and I hated that movie. I hated it so much, and I know so many people love that movie too. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever, and so I was worried that, like, those guys directed this movie. Now, I will first of all say this movie is not as bad as that one. I didn't hate this movie, but I did definitely see that same style of humor that I hated in Swiss Army Man was present in this movie, and I think tanked it. I'm sorry, I didn't like the humor in this movie. The humor, I just don't find that physical body humor funny. And, like, they have that, the whole thing of the movie is that you can get, like, different powers or abilities of your counterparts in parallel universes if you do something weird. So people always do these weird shit to try to get different abilities and powers, and it's meant to be funny. But I just thought it was dumb. Particularly when they had this award at the start of the film, like, this character revealed this award that looked like a butt plug. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's definitely going up someone's ass. And then later in the movie, that's one of the things one of the characters did to get abilities, they shoved it up his ass. And I thought that was the dumbest fucking thing ever. Like, I hated that. I hated it so much. And there were some good character beats in this movie, which is why I wouldn't say I hated the movie overall. But I just, similar to Swiss Army Man, I think this movie went on for way too long. Like, it was dragging and dragging, and I was like, is this movie over yet? And it just got too silly with the everything bagel. Like, that was, I didn't like it. I'm sorry. If some people really like this movie, I'm not taking anything away from you. It's just not my style at all. And so, yeah, I would actually give this a 6 out of 10. It was just slightly above being a bad movie. It was okay for me. Sorry, but I don't think this movie was a masterpiece. Anyway, you're still with me? Okay, thanks for those who are. Let me get now into ranking the comedy movies that I saw this year. So I saw 3 comedy movies, or that were straight out comedies. You could say Everything Everywhere All at Once in the Menu were like somewhat comedies, and Thor: Love and Thunder, but other than those, or even Glass Onion, and The Bullet Train for that matter, but other than those, like straight out comedies, oh, and Unbearable Weight, but anyway, sorry, those all fit into different categories. I'm going to rank 3 flat out comedies I saw this year: The Good, the Bad, and the Awesome. And so I'll start with number 3, The Bad, which is, I'm almost don't even want to talk about this movie on my channel at all, because I feel bad talking about how I didn't like this movie, and that is Clerks 3. Because I've seen Kevin Smith on a lot of podcasts and videos and stuff. He's such a cool guy. He's such a nice guy, too. So I feel really bad for saying this. Kind of like I'm talking shit about a friend. But I know he's not my friend. He's a celebrity. But, he seems like such a nice guy. And I want him to succeed. And I want to like his movies, which is why I went and saw this, and I was excited when I heard people say it was a good movie. But unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it. I really feel like, and again, I hate to say this, but I feel like Kevin Smith lost something after the millennium. Like, after Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, none of his movies were that great. Like, I used to love his 90s movies. Chasing Amy, Clerks, Jay and Silent Bob, Strike Back, Mallrats, some of my favorite movies, favorite comedies of all time. But unfortunately, after the 2000s, like, his movies have been middling to bad. And this, I think, would fit more closer to the middling, I guess. I do want to be nice to it, but it just feels hollow and like it's really missing something. Certainly, I don't know. It feels like this franchise went on for too long. Like, I didn't even like Clerks 2. Although, to be fair, I will say Clerks 2 was worse than this one. I think this was better than Clerks 2. But still, like, the ending was supposed to be, like, something that was really, like, sad or emotional. And I just didn't connect with me. I just didn't... I did not think it worked. So anyway, next comedy I want to talk about is, well, The Good. I think I'm more saying the average might be better than The Good, more accurate. And that is Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. Now, here's the thing about Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. I was laughing hysterically at this movie. I was having a grand old time. I was laughing my head off. I thought it was the funniest thing ever for the first 20 minutes. And then after the first 20 minutes, I was starting to realize more and more and more that they're just repeating the same joke over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so I didn't totally hate the rest of the film, but I certainly didn't enjoy it as the first 20 minutes because the premise started to wear thin. And more than that, like, so I thought this was a really interesting concept. I thought it was a really clever way to bring back these characters who were, teenagers in the 90s and bring them back in the modern time and them still be teenagers. I hate the way the Simpsons do it, where they just ignore the passage of time and just pretend like Bart's been 11 for 40 years. And so this did a different thing, which I thought was more clever, where they actually had Beavis and Butthead time travel from the over the mid-90s to 2022. And I do think there were a lot of good jokes. Like, I did find it funny the way Beavis and Butthead were being very nonchalant and completely oblivious to the fact that they just traveled 30 years into the future and not really noticing or giving a shit. But even that joke did wear a little bit thin. But although I did find it hilarious when Beavis went to his house and it was up for sale, and the real estate agent was trying to tell him the story about how his mother kept looking for his lost son and was, ruined her life trying to find him, and Beavis wasn't even paying attention and just operating a blender. I did kind of like stuff like that, but the problem is the whole movie was based on the joke of them wanting to get laid and thinking that misinterpreting things other characters said that makes it think that they want to have sex with them. And that's the same joke they've used throughout Beavis and Butthead, and it's just got really old. And not only that, is the plot they had once they did arrive in 2022, where there's government agents thinking they're aliens and trying to hunt them down, was pretty much the exact same plot of the first Beavis and Butthead movie, where they had the government agents tracking them down because they thought they were terrorists or something. And just substitute the word terrorist for aliens, and it's the same fucking plot. And so, I won't say I didn't find this funny, because I did, but it was kind of, the same joke over and over. And the ending was, I did kind of find it funny, but at the same time find it stupid. Anyway, in a bad way. Of course, Beavis and Butthead are supposed to be stupid. But anyway, let me get into my favorite comedy of the year, The Awesome. And that is Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I think maybe the reason why I like this movie as much as I did is the material that is about Weird Al, although it's not really about Weird Al. It's the Weird Al biopic. It's the totally, completely true story, absolutely happened, of Weird Al Yankovic. Of course, Weird Al was a producer and writer in the film. It has a cameo in the film, or a small role, I should say. And so he was heavily involved in crafting it. And the whole point is it's making fun of biopics. It's making fun of how unrealistic and how fast and loose musical biopics play with real events. And so it starts off as kind of ridiculous and kind of silly, but as the movie goes, it gets more and more ridiculous until finally get to the ending, where it's a straight out fantasy that has no resemblance to reality whatsoever. And it was hilarious. I'm sorry, it was, to be fair, pretty much the same joke the entire film, just how bad and unrealistic musical biopics are. And that's pretty much telling the same joke in many different ways, but it's ultimately saying the same thing. Musical biopics are unrealistic. But it just got so ridiculous that I just found that hilarious. And more than that, some of the specific jokes they did throughout, particularly this party they had where Jack Black was playing a character. I'm not going to repeat the whole joke because I don't want to ruin it, and plus I'd just go on for a long time. But if you know what I'm talking about, when Weird Al says hard pass, that had me cracking up, fucking laughing in hysterics. So yeah, I think this was the best comedy of the year. So anyway, and I'll get and do my top 3 favorite movies of the year. And I'm going to feel like a Marvel shill because it just so happens number 3 and number 2 are Marvel movies, MCU movies, but that's just how it panned out. I'm not actually that big of an MCU fanboy, if you know anything about me. But anyway, number 3 is Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, which I actually really liked, and I kind of liked it more than the first one, if I'm being honest. I think the villain of Namor was really interesting. I think the dynamic they had really worked. I think they did a really good job dealing with and paying respect to the recent death of Chadwick Boseman, and transferring that to the character he played, and seeing how that affected Wakanda, and seeing how playing around that and how the characters involved reacted to that. And I think they tied in the main story, which apparently they wrote with, the Black Panther T'Challa character in mind before Chadwick Boseman passed away, and they transferred that story to this. And I thought they did a really good job. I couldn't really tell that. It seemed natural, and I was interested throughout, so I thought it was a pretty solid Marvel movie, or movie in general. So, my second favorite movie of the year, and I don't care what anyone says, is my favorite multiverse movie of the year. Despite what everyone else says. But I already talked about the other one. But anyway, it is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I love this film. I loved it. There was a few things here and there that I don't think works for me, but overall I think this movie got way more hate than it deserved. I think the biggest complaint that I most strongly disagree with, and in fact kind of annoys me the most, is, they didn't travel to enough parallel universe. It was a single parallel universe of madness, not a multiverse. Who cares? Is that why you want to see the film, or would you rather see the film because it has a good story? Me, personally, I want to see a film that has a good story, that has good character stories, and this absolutely had an amazing character story that was really heartfelt, that I think was really powerful. I think they dealt with Stephen Strange's regrets over not having married Christine very well, and more than that, the whole heart of the film was about his learning to protect and trust this young girl he just met, American Chavez. And I think that was the strength of the film. That was the heart of the film. I don't give a shit how many parallel universes they go to. They can go to one. That's fine. I don't care. I'm here for good character stories and a good movie. That's just me. That's just my thinking of it. Sorry. But they talk about that fan service scene with the Illuminati. I loved it. I didn't have any issues with it. It didn't seem too fan servicey to me, unlike another Marvel movie that came out last year that I think did feel too fan servicey. But I will not mention that one. But anyway, loved this movie. I thought it was great, underrated. So, anyway, we'll get to my number one favorite movie of the year, and that is Prey. I think this might be my favorite Predator movie. It's funny because I've been a fan of the Predator franchise for a long time. I'll go out and see all these Predator movies even though they sucked. I had high hopes for The Predator, but that turned out to be one of the worst ones they made. It was just a mess. Predators was okay. I've heard some people say it was really great. It kind of felt nihilistic to me. I wasn't that much into it, but it didn't suck. I'll give it that. Unlike the Predator versus Alien franchise movies, which sucked balls. Those movies were terrible. But, and I've made the video about this before, so if you're really familiar with my channel, you might already know this, but I actually like Predator 2 more than Predator 1, which is, sacrilege. Most people talk about Predator 2 like it's a terrible movie. It is cheesy. It is definitely more cheeseball than the first one, but I kind of like it because of that. And to be fair, to be completely honest, I have a bit more nostalgia attached with Predator 2. I remember watching it all the time when I was 11 and 12, and watching it repeatedly is one of my favorite movies. I just enjoy it more. I do enjoy how Danny Glover was like such an over-the-top like stereotype of the rebellious cop in the 90s. Kind of love it for that. But, I'm not here to talk about those movies. I'm here to talk about Prey, which has a very different tone when I look at it. A very different tone than the first two Predator movies, which are the only good ones. Well, Predators is okay, but we won't talk about the other ones that are complete garbage. But this is definitely easily the best Predator movie that came out since Predator 2. I do think it might be the best, as I said, of the entire franchise, because it's not that cheesy. And the character stories is what is absolutely amazing. They're absolutely powerful. It's absolutely strong. Even though at the heart of the movie there isn't that much to it. It is basically Predator going around killing people until the hero kills it, which is a typical Predator movie. But it's the way they build suspense and the way that they get you invested in these particular characters, I think is done better than any Predator movie, if I may be so bold. It definitely is free from that cheeseball film. Even the first film had it, because particularly like, all right, not to spoil too much, but there's a scene at the end where the main character sets a trap for the Predator, and she's like sitting there waiting for the Predator to step in the trap, and it's like, come on, do it, which is kind of a callback to what Schwarzenegger did in the first Predator film. But when I went back and saw a clip of that, I just saw how ridiculous that Schwarzenegger clip was in comparison, because he's like, come on, do it, kill me, do it now, I'm here, do it, kill me. Seeing that in comparison to just, come on, do it, to, come on, I'm here, do it, kill me now. This actually reminded me of how kind of cheesy that one is. Whereas this, and plus there was, I don't know, there was just too much testosterone in that first movie for me, for my particular taste. But this one, I think it had it was more character based, like, and I love the fact that all the protagonists in the film were Native American. There was no white savior in this film, and that's what made me really want to watch the version of this film that was in Comanche, because to see the language they would actually are supposed to be speaking, rather than the Hunt for Red October switched with them actually speaking English when we're supposed to pretend they're speaking Comanche the whole time. So I did watch this film like 4 times with different people, because I first saw it on the plane flying out to Oregon, and it was on my phone, so it was this tiny little screen, and I was like, this is a beautiful movie, I shouldn't be watching it on my phone. So I watched it again, but it wasn't in Comanche, because my sister didn't want to watch it in Comanche, so I had to watch it again when I came back to Maryland, and on the bigger screen. I wish I could have seen this in the theater. It is a shame that the best Predator movie to come out, at the very least to come out in a long, long time, was the one that went straight to streaming, when it was way better than those other pieces of shit that went to the theater. And it was beautiful too. I would have loved to seen it in the theater. It is kind of a shame, but it's the era we live in now, basically. But yeah, I love this film, and I think this may be one of my favorite movies of all time. Maybe it's because I'm partial to the Predator franchise, and I'm just so happy they finally made a good one after decades of making crap. But yeah, maybe that's why I'm just too overzealous and think it's the best one. But it's definitely my favorite movie of the year. So, that is it on my video of ranking and reviewing the movies I saw this year. I never said this would be a short video. And if you did watch all the way through, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel. You should watch my top 10 favorite shows of the year while you're at it. And I also cover many other shows like Star Trek, covering Star Trek the original series at the moment, and we'll be covering Star Trek Picard Season 3 when that comes out, and also many other shows. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.